Hi guys, welcome to London. It is lockdown as per usual. But anyway, so today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I edit this photo in the Maldives. It's one of my favorite photos. I took it for a client quite a few years ago, but I absolutely love the colors, the composition, and they were really happy with the shot. And I think the edit is really important to get these underwater photos absolutely perfect, because they are fairly tricky to edit and get the color balance right in terms of skin tone, in terms of the blues. So I want to show you how I did that. First of all though, this is what it was shot on. It's shot on an Aquatech underwater housing. These things are fantastic. They take a bit of getting used to, but they're really good, solid bits of equipment. The camera and lens in question to take this photo is a 16-35mm lens f4 with a Nikon D810. D810, pretty old camera, but still provides fantastic quality. Please do take a minute to explore my Instagram. I've got tons of travel content on there, which I think you'd absolutely love. And also, if you get a chance, subscribe to this YouTube channel where I have also loads of other editing videos and travel stuff. But anyway, let's get into this edit. So this is the image in question. The first thing I'm going to do is crop it. I think that's really important just to get the crop right before you start anything major. So I'm just going to do a really basic 4x5 crop, as that's Instagram and that's what I would be using it for. So I'm just going to go like that. One thing to note, which I do a lot in my workflow, is use my presets. And this isn't like, oh yeah, buy my presets, or I'm not going to teach this class. No. I just wanted to explain that how much presets, if creating your own or getting someone else's, can speed up your workflow. And especially with working with commercial clients, it just helps so much having like a selection if you make them yourself, or like another photographer's, but they just really help gain a color palette. And I don't really call them, you know, one-click things. I don't think presets ever are, and photographers who claim that is, I don't think it's quite right, because I think there's so many more details you need to refine in an edit than just clicking one preset and that's it. But they're super useful to get, you know, an array of different colors and just so instantly, instead of playing around with. But yeah, that's just something to keep in mind and to add your workflow. I think a lot of people do all that already, but if you don't, I would definitely look into getting some, creating or doing some presets. It really does speed up your workflow. And yeah, and sometimes you can't remember how to get the same tones as before. Some images you spend hours and hours over, it is quite hard to recreate some of your edits sometimes. So just having a base layer of the colors is really important. Anyway, rambled way too much about presets. So the first thing I'm going to do with this image is just really brighten up. I did the crop earlier and that is good. I'm really happy with that. So the first thing I'm going to really concentrate is on getting the blues how I want them. So I'm going to play with the HSLs and the color calibration. And what's the difference between the HSLs and color calibration? So color calibration, it affects the overall image, instead that the HSLs are a bit more precise and more selective, and they can isolate individual colors, where, you know, the color calibration affects, you know, overall the reds, greens and blues. I much prefer the saturation you get out of using color calibration. I don't really know why. I can't explain it, but I really do prefer the saturation that you can get out of them. So anyway, I'm going to just lower the blues like so, and I'm going to go into the hues and push the aqua all the way this way, and I'm going to push the blues towards there we go. And then I'm going to go into color calibration, bring down the blue primary like that, and bring in saturation. I don't think I've got that quite right. I'm just going to play around with it again. I think it's too green for me. That's a bit of a better tone for me. So pretty quickly we've taken out the density of the water. I think that's one of the hardest things about editing underwater photos, is that when you shoot them, the water and the colors are just so dense. Taking a bit out of the weight of the image is super important. I'm just going to add a little bit more saturation in there. Just keep playing with those. So I think you've really got to refine between those two how you want your blues to look. And I think it's really important to gain, you know, your own look and how you want them to look. So I'm then going to go into luminance, and I'm just going to bring down the blues a little bit, just a tiny bit, and bring up like that. And then I am going to go back on to basic adjustments. So I'm going to just try add, you know, a bit of adjustments in terms of adding a bit of contrast. You know, it's a little bit overexposed, so I'm going to bring down the highlight just a tad, up the shadows so I can see more details, and then create a little bit of contrast as well with the whites and black. I find the contrast tool crunches the blacks, and I think that's quite nice sometimes, that it kind of adds a little bit of clarity, but I think if you want to do a kind of a softer contrast, use black and whites or the tonal curve. I do that as well. I kind of merge them all together and kind of balance in them. So next up, I'm going to go into the tonal curve and just create a really simple S curve. I really like in my work to raise the blacks a little bit, not too much. A nice S curve is pretty good. So you lift up on the far and you can see how it raises the blacks a little. It's not too obvious in here because there's not really any massive dark areas, but it just softens the image a bit. And I think it will become more obvious the effect this has had when we start playing with her skin tones. And I think that's the really important thing here. At the moment, I think image looks great. Maybe I think turn down the blue primary a bit. It's got a bit intense. That's a lot better for me. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna have a quick play with the temperature and tint. Temperature and tint can make a really massive overall effect of this image. So I'm just gonna have a quick play with it to see if I can, you know, adjust the blues a bit more how I want them. And don't underestimate the power of these, because it is crazy how much temperature and tint can affect an image and the look of an image. And I'm just gonna bring the tint to the purple, as firstly, that is really complementing the blues. It's bringing out the colors of the blues I want. And also it's starting to turn her skin tone in the direction that I want. Before it was very cold and not a good tone. It just looks very odd. It still looks very odd. She is a tiny bit green, but bear with me. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of clarity to the image. I really like that. And yeah, so we've gone from this to this pretty quickly. But now we're gonna use a couple different tools just to refine her skin tone. Just before we do that, actually, I'm going to quickly add some sharpening. So I usually add about 60 or 70 sharpening, a mask of about that. So you can hold down Option on a Mac, which shows you where the sharpening is happening. So I think that works about well. And something I didn't actually mention at the start is obviously lens correction. And this is something I don't do very often, just because I quite like the bokeh effect of most lenses, and I know when the lens is creating distortion I don't like. I would want to mention now that is such a big effect on your overall exposure sometimes and your overall look of the image. So you see here down at the bottom, enabling it has actually really brightened up the foreground and kind of almost stretched it. So I'm going to leave it off for this image, but it's something to keep in mind. If you want to do it first. And I know I should have mentioned that at the start. Anyway, so we're going to really concentrate on her skin tones. So in terms of getting her skin tone right, we're going to use a brush, and I'm going to fast forward this, but basically I'm going to brush in temperature and tint, and you can see already how it's making such a big effect. The best thing to do would be show select mask overlay down here, and you can see it precisely where you're brushing, and maybe change the feather of your brush, as you don't want it to spill over into the water, because then it'll start to really show in the water where you're masking. So I'll do that now. You see that you can get this like line, so you don't want that. So I'm just going to quickly go around this really fast so I can show you guys this. Okay, so you've just watched me fast forward through all of that. And basically what I'm trying to do now is create a balance of colors. I don't want her to be ridiculously warm, but I want her skin tone to be as natural as possible. And as you can see, I've done this as fast as possible. There's some places which I should have gone around the edges more delicately, and I really wish you guys would do that. And just for the sake of this video, I'm doing it fairly fast. There we go. So I play with temperature and tint here. So, you know, the original temperature and tint was obviously at 0. So her skin tone is obviously very green, picking up colors from the water. So adjusting the purple tint towards the purple, and then the temperature right up to the top, like so. Sometimes you might actually have to do another layer, just because in certain areas you can see her legs is really not converting with that. So sometimes I have to do a couple of layers of this in certain places just to get rid of the greens, because they're just so prominent, especially, you know, like places around the edge, like so. And obviously I'm totally rushing this to make this as an example, but on the original image I must have had about 5 or 6 different brushes in different areas just to get the skin tone really even and get it a lot better than this. Just for this example, I'm going to do just those kind of layers, because as you zoom out, you won't be able to see, you know, the small mistakes like so. Now I'm just going to go into the HSLs, and I can adjust her skin tones from here as well. And you couldn't really see that effect before because of how the white balance on her skin tone was. So I can affect the color of her bikini. Obviously I don't really want to do that. I think I like the red, but here I can just make minor adjustments to her skin tone. I think it could be a little bit more orange, and there we go. Maybe take out some of the yellow. So I can remove the green, which is a really good idea because it gets rid of, you'll see in a minute, there we go, it gets rid of those kind of horrible green shadows which I was getting even though I'd masked over it, and that looks pretty good. And I think overall, yeah, I'm really happy with that. So overall, that was a really quick understanding of how I edit my underwater shots. And there is a lot more to adjust. I would probably spend nearly half an hour adjusting all the little details, but I wanted to show you quickly how you can get really good underwater shots and what tools you should be using. I spend so long refining my images, and I think you guys should do the same. You know, for example, I would bring a little bit more light coming from the sky. I would make it a little bit darker on the sea floor to get the textures coming through, and maybe lower the clarity there so it really focuses on the middle. But that's totally down to you. There is so many different refinement brushes, and I think getting overall understanding of how to gain the colors in terms of, you know, playing with balance, well, not playing with, kind of like balancing the aqua and the blues, and then going into color calibration and doing the same thing. It's just really important. You know, there's so many different elements you can play with and add, and I would just spend a fair amount of time really just ciphering through the different colors and just playing with them. Like for example, I'm playing with the red primary and the HSLs on her skin tone. So stuff like that is just something you've really got to play with. Now that's, you know, obviously taking her bikini a bit too far in the wrong direction in terms of the color I was looking for, but that's why I've gone back into red and pushed it towards the more of the original color. So we've kind of gone from that, which is a very dark, obviously kind of dense image, to that, which is really bright. I think it might be a little bit overexposed overall, but actually I'm really happy with this edit. So guys, I hope you found this useful. Please do comment below any questions, anything you want to talk about. I can't stress enough, please do spend longer on your brushes and really refining those edges, because obviously if I deliver this to my client, they wouldn't be happy. They can see that her hands haven't been done quite right. Her leg has been masked really lazily, but as an example, this is how you would do it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do subscribe if you liked it, and there's a few other editing videos on this channel. Otherwise, I do have presets available if you guys are interested at all, and each of those packs kind of provide a ton of editing tutorial content, which yeah, I hope you'll check that out. But anyway, have a good day.